I am Bridget O'Connor. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Lewis Palmer High School. And real quickly, I'd like to thank some of the people that were behind this. Kim Sandoval is my counterpart at PR, and our counselors, Ms. Kugler and Ms. Hudson, also helped a great deal to put this together. This idea actually came from two different areas. One, you have, I'll explain the handouts you have. In 2017, Youth Prevention had a team board, and they sponsored a think tank around what's going on in our community, what are students struggling with. And so this is really just a summation of those. It was 150 students, schools all across El Paso County. So it's not necessarily specific to our students, but I would say the struggles and some of the themes that you see is definitely true. So it's really just kind of a conversation starter. We are going to have a Q&A intermixed here tonight, so this might spur some thoughts. In particular, what I found interesting about the think tank is that overwhelmingly what teens said is they really want to have a relationship with adults. It just goes wrong in some pretty important ways. And some of those ways are, number one, they're afraid to be judged, so they avoid having that conversation because they're afraid of our judgment. Number two, they're afraid that we're going to overreact. And then number three, they really just want someone to listen. They don't want us to immediately jump to solutions. They just want to be heard, and they want to have a voice. And so that's really what this night, the teen board actually has sponsored 3 of these in different parts of El Paso County, and I wanted to bring the idea here to LP. And then secondly, we had an event in December where we started a community conversation about mental wellness and our students and what they're going through. And our first student up there, Brennan, said, you know what would be a great idea is if teens could just talk to adults and let them know what we're going through. And I was like, Brennan, you are onto something. So the worlds collided, and so we have tonight just a few ground rules. And looking at this audience, this is not going to be a problem. Number one, this isn't about shaming anyone. We all make mistakes. We all have really good intentions and best interests. So I ask that you first seek to understand and understand the relationship and how we can do better by one another. And that we really honor the bravery of these fine young men and women up here who said, yes, I have a story, and I want to tell it, and I want to engage in this conversation. So when we get to the Q&A, that you pose those questions and you're seeking clarification. Yes? Okay. So without further ado, they're each going to introduce themselves and the other prompts, and they were given 3 prompts. What do you wish everyone knew about your story? They're going to each tell their story. And then number 2, what do adults do well as you walk through this journey? And number 3, what do you wish adults would do differently?
Feelings and experiences should be viewed as they are, rather than compared to your own.
Alright, hey guys, I'm Riley Colby and I'm a student at Palmer Ridge. I'm also a junior. And my I Wish You Knew is more directed to the students, which is don't chase being cool in high school, because once you're out of high school, it's a whole different world.
Hi everyone, my name is Java Hammett. I'm a senior here at Lewis Palmer, and I wish you knew that it gets better.
Hi there, my name is Piper Combs. I am a junior at Palmer Ridge High School, and what I wish you knew is that it can get pretty lonely in a world filled with other people.
Hi, my name is Zoe Kinzer. I'm a senior here at Lewis Palmer, and I wish you knew the long-term effects of racial bullying in high school.
Hi, I'm Emma Hauser. I am a student at PR, and I am in 12th grade. I wish you knew just how hard it is going through high school, and especially with medical conditions on top of everything.
My name is Lauren Phillips. I'm a senior here at LP, and I wish you knew that pain cannot be quantified. Small or large, all pain matters.
Respect. It's the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated. A simple notion that's been drilled into our minds since we could speak. However, many of us, admittedly myself included, have yet to master it. Relationships are built on respect, and time and effort must be put into them to make them flourish. Unhealthy relationships are formed when one party doesn't realize their effect on the other, or the work is unilateral. This is sometimes the case in our district among staff, parents, adults, and students, and it's the reason we're all here tonight. Teens do feel respected. Teens do not feel respected when adults blame lack of work ethic, laziness, emotion, and absent-mindedness on hormones, mobile device addiction, and school drama. While many of these excuses are reasonable, they are occasionally not true, and they can quickly be turned into stereotypical standbys. When they are used as fallback defenses by adults, teens can feel marginalized, judged, and unappreciated. Young adults then tend to push back and turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Teens do feel respected when we are involved in adult activities and conversations. Being in the presence of adults helps make us feel acknowledged. Simply put, we want to be treated like adults. Not exactly like you all, however. I hope we can mutually agree that I don't want to be doing taxes at 15. I can understand the reasoning behind acting as though we are immature, because periodically we are. But more often than not, we'll make the right choice and hopefully do the right thing. So, as Abba once said, take a chance on me.
Okay, so if many of you knew me, you'd expect me not to be here tonight. Like, pretend you're my friend. I'm usually a generally happy person. I run, play sports. I'm in somewhat advanced classes, not genius or anything, so don't get that wrong. I have a happy family, so it's like all around seems like a good life. But what people don't realize is what happened behind the scenes of the good life that it seems to be. And that's what my story is about. So, about 3 years ago, I started my high school career. I can remember the day very vividly. It was August 16th at 7:40 in the morning, walking so confidently into Palmer Ridge. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't just totally new to the school, but I also the district. I had a vision in my head, a very unreal and fake vision. I was going to walk into Palmer Ridge that first day and make so many new friends. But that was not it. You know, it didn't happen that way. So let me tell you something. It definitely did not go that way. It was the exact opposite of what I planned. So about 2 weeks into the school year, everything all fell apart, but the force of a tsunami. I can just remember crying night after night for many weeks in a row. Finally, after getting over myself and feeling sorry for myself, I came to a blatant realization. I knew that I had to be the change. If I didn't change, nothing else would either. Now, I'm not going to lie, freshman year was very rough with very few enjoyable days or memories. But sophomore year finally rolled around. I was ready to jump on in positively and be a productive student the best I could. So I joined some new clubs and started to finally find my place around Palmer Ridge. I was busier than ever with sports, clubs, friends, and my classes. Not only was I trying to fulfill my own expectations, but also everyone else's, coaches, parents, and teachers. In trying to keep up and track with my classes, clubs, sports, and everything else, I had an epiphany that I had to be a very detailed student. My planner was my lifeboat in a storm of busyness and chaos. After every class, I would take the time to write down my assignments and due dates. It was a coping mechanism when being stressed and not knowing where to start. I would, and still to this day, sit down and label what needs to be done in sequential order. Not only has organization helped me tremendously, but knowing when to ask for help and who my supporters has allowed me to spread my wings in many different avenues. Learning to ask for help was a big learning curve for myself personally. It was something I never wanted to admit to myself or do in public. Along with asking for help was finding who's the most appropriate to ask. My number one supporters have always been my parents. Countless times I have cried in my parents' arms. What do? They stand me right back up and give me the confidence in a step-by-step fashion to take on the problem. Their advice was always, 1, identify the problem, 2, come up with a list of possible solutions, and 3, implement the most common sensible solution. Now, after being in high school for almost 3 years, junior year has been the most instrumental and taught me the most. Junior year has started off in the frenzy activities. I was running cross country, joined National Honor Society, a chairman for student council, a link leader, and a member of the DECA board. I thought I could handle it all, manage my grades in challenging advanced and AP classes, exceed and fulfill my expectations in student council, and help run the DECA chapter of our school, and support the new freshmen. But I couldn't do it all to the best of my abilities. I had to take a step back and analyze my position. I had to lean on my supporters and ask for help. High school is not only about having the best grades or being involved in many clubs, but it's also about learning to overcome academic, athletic, and extracurricular activities. Learning to balance home life with school life, making mistakes, and fixing those mistakes is paramount. In retrospect, I had to take a few steps back and evaluate what's best for me. What should you be doing right now? Should you be taking a few steps back?
Okay, we're gonna do Q&A. So,
So I'm Deputy Hammond, Sheriff's Office. My question is, on the law enforcement side, how would you like law enforcement to respond to questions or concerns that you guys have, whether it be inside the school system or outside of the school system?
I guess there's like a fine line of being so involved in schools and not being involved in schools. Like, I know when the police always come to my school, it's like, oh, what happened? What is going on? And it's like always like a negative, I don't know, impact, I guess, on the students. And I guess if like bringing the cops in, like being friendly and all, really helps. So.
I think seeing a security officer, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but more often, can help students feel a lot more secure in school.
Yes.
while she's walking up there, you might notice on your think tank results, I believe that SROs came up number 2 as people, number 1, people they would reach out to, students reach out to and feel connected to in their schools, which I think is actually a really pretty cool statement about law enforcement and your presence in our schools. It makes a difference.
Hey there. So my question is, as a parent, you are saying, you talked about being respected as students. My opinion is respect is earned on both sides. So how do parents have a boundary with children that they're trying to raise and kids your age when some of your peers are extremely disrespectful and they have no manners whatsoever, and then on the flip side, you all say you want to be respected. So can you help clarify how to have a boundary, and what boundaries do you have as a student with your parents and adults?
Well, I think I kind of mentioned that in my speech, because I said most of the time, sometimes we can make the wrong decisions, but I don't believe that everybody's perfect, so I think that's very acceptable. The stereotype that high schoolers are unruly or disrespectful is something that we're trying to fight tonight, so I think in general, understanding and acceptance is what we should work towards, and maybe not establish boundaries before we really understand one another.
Because it seems sometimes it's an automatic defensive mechanism, which is a totally normal thing to be protective and defensive. So how, as an adult, do you look at you guys, or in general, you're speaking for a lot of people, and and peel back the layer or actually see through that defense mechanism? How do we identify that?
I think that it's important to talk, and sometimes the adult might have to initiate that talk because teens can be uncomfortable. And I think you have to approach it calm, gently, without harsh words or raised voices, because then that makes us want to open up even less. And it will take time because, again, relationships are built on respect, and it takes time and effort to make them flourish.
So let's just say, Lauren, that you were extremely disrespectful in the hall to me, and we have a conflict, and this goes for anyone. How would you like adults to approach that conflict to get to this solution?
I don't want to give away too much of my story, so I think the main approach is to, what you said at the beginning, is seek understanding of us, instead of an immediate something is wrong response. More to come.
Anyone else?
I think it's about compromise. Like, if I agree on the respect thing, because respect is earned. But when someone, let's say a kid, like, back talks to an adult and that's not okay, I just feel like saying to the kid, like, all right, let's find a way that you're not going to do that to me again, and that I'm going to try to do something good about this too. It's all about, like, a compromise together. Let's make a change.
I have a quick question. In your education through school, have you guys had any classes around how to solve conflict, how you respond to conflict, like formal things, not just going to talk to a counselor or those things, but have had direct conversations of, when I have a conflict with someone, I'll avoid it, or I end up attacking and lashing out. Have you had those conversations directly with those tools given to you, or have those been things that you've learned along the way as you've addressed those issues and problems?
Sadly, I have learned those things through learning through people around me. I don't think there's anything really that we have yet. I'm hoping that will change, but I think there can be some improvement with teaching kids how to talk to adults, how to talk to other students. And again, it's a respect thing, not just for adults, but also for other students.
I have not had any conversations or talks like that in my schooling, and I think that should be something that's worked towards, because part of the disrespect that some teens do is probably because they don't know how to handle themselves around adults.
I actually have a comment towards your question. So in our health class last year, for me, they did a conflict resolution unit, but it wasn't very helpful because it's not something that you'll think immediately when you have a conflict. You don't sit there and think through all the steps when you're getting worked up.
All right, so we haven't in any of my classes formally talked about it, but there's one teacher that I'm pretty good friend, not friends, but close to, and I know I can go to her, which is Miss Kids. She's taught me a lot in that way where she opens up to me and I can go to her, and it becomes a class conversation, which I think is not it is teacher's job, but it's also your job to initiate and so on, be approachable to them.
Okay, Zelda, are you ready to share your story?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. Before I start, I just want to say thank you all for coming. Not only does this mean so much to me, I know it means so much to everyone else here, so thank you. Alrighty, I'm so excited. Oh my goodness. I wish you knew that it gets better. And I know that it's hard to think that when you're in a deep, dark place. But if you believe, you can achieve. It does get better. And once you realize that, you're going to be in the moment and just be like, wow, that girl with the curly hair was so right. It took me kind of a long time to realize that it was going to get better. Because for a long time, I was just so, oh man, this is trash. Like I was really sad. And I don't really want to talk a lot about that because I want to talk about the happy part of my story and where I am now. A lot of growth goes on through this whole high school experience. And you come to a point, or I did, where I knew that I needed to change my life in a positive way. So when I looked myself in the mirror every day, instead of seeing my flaws or things that I didn't like about myself, I would look myself in the eyes and say, Java, you're beautiful. It's okay that you have acne, it's fine, it's gonna go away. Your hair is awesome, embrace your curves. It just took me saying those positive affirmations to myself to make me realize how beautiful and great of a person I really am. And sometimes you really have to do that and just tell yourself, hey, you're great. Because when you say negative things to yourself, that's what you're gonna feel. I was on Instagram one time and I saw all these symbols everywhere and I was like, what are these about? But for some reason they really resonated with me. It turns out they're called chakras and like you have 7 in your body, but when you align these, you become less stressed, depressed, and overwhelmed. So I was like, okay, well now I know how to align these, what do I do? What can I do? Meditation. As hippie as it sounds, meditation will help you so much to thrive. You just go, before you go to bed, just breathe, just calm down. It's okay. Everything's okay. And it's hard to realize that sometimes. I know. But one day you're gonna come to a point and you're gonna be happy that you kept going. I wanna also talk about what I think adults can do well, or adults do well, and what adults can do better. When I was kind of in that state, my parents knew something was off with me, and they reached out to me. And as a kid who thinks that they're alone, having someone say, hey, I'm here for you, what can I do? It changes your mind, because you're like, oh my gosh, someone's there. Oh my goodness. But I'm not letting you off the hook. Alright? I'm just kidding. A lot of parents, not even mine, but I've heard from a lot of other parents as well, they like to compare their high school experience to our high school experience. And what I mean by that is our education is a lot more difficult than maybe what you guys have gone through. And that's just what I think. But if you guys have ever taken math class, you would know, it's gotten way harder over the years. So one thing I want to say about that is when your kid's stressed out over a test or homework or like, oh my gosh, I'm going through something, just be there. Be there and love them and just be kind, because that's just what we need. We just need someone. Thank you all so much.
Any questions?
Hi, Piper. Hi. So my story is going to be a little bit different from the previous stories that you've heard. My story is more about going into high school through my past losses that I've had and what I've gone through to kind of get where I am today. Being a modern teenager, you put up with common high stack pressures of oncoming childhood and the opinion of your fellow classmates, so it's not always pleasant. In often cases, this ends up in a result of bullying, a hot topic of any junior high or secondary education. I've had to deal with it. Many of us have had to deal with it at some point or are currently going through it. My main story began before my freshman year. 2 weeks before school was scheduled to start, my grandma passed away. At the time, my grandma was one of the very few people in my life that I trusted and nearly told everything about every day. So when she died so suddenly, without getting to say goodbye, it really hurt me and made me very distant from everyone else. My year was off kind of to a rocky start, but wasn't too bad when I met teachers that I liked and met many other students new or that I've known in the past. Middle to halfway throughout the year, however, is when I started having problems with a specific group of kids that picked on me in English and Spanish class. I was able to let teachers know what was going on, but not much was done to stop it after that. I was even diagnosed with depression later that year because of it. Fast forward to sophomore year is when things got really bad for me. New and old bullies returned into my life and made it hell. On my bus, a group of kids began throwing things at me, ranging from small little plastic things to like large chunks of rock, and just mumbling insults with my name left and right. I was able to even hear them through my headphones at full blast. I could see their glares and like them pointing at me through my tablet screen every day on the bus. When I was able to complain to my bus driver and vice principals, those kids pulled all the brakes that they had and said whatever they could to the bus driver to try and get me kicked off the bus, which that day is when I walked into my house with tears flowing down my face, and that's kind of how my parents got involved. In school, it was a whole nother story. In English and in my strength class, it also hurt because I was being picked on for my hobbies, my sexuality was made fun of, and I was even sexually harassed by someone considered kind and popular by many others in the school. So no one really truly believed me other than my best friend. Weeks passed with curses being made of my name, catcalls and whistles and unwanted advances. It brought back old thoughts of mine, ones I never thought I would have to go through again, of what life would be like if I were never to have existed at all. Then I met an assistance counselor for the year who became my newest best friend. She was able to give me supporting words that I haven't had in years and told me to never give up, for I had more purpose than the amount my bullies were giving me. Not long after meeting her, the situation on my bus was resolved and the kids who were caught were forced apart and moved to the front of the bus. This aftermath also allowed me to sign up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes. I was asked to join our school's Sources of Strength program as a peer leader, and met a group of kids who dealt with the same people and problems I did. This year, things have been way better for me. Barely any harassment in any classes, and different events that have occurred I've gotten involved in just to kind of help my high school career and goals advance more. I am grateful to those who were quick to step in when they noticed things were a bit unruly or out of control. But I wish more would have been done to prevent events like this from happening. What adults do right is quickly jump in and respond when it occurs simultaneously. However, little effort or attention can be put into the cases at hand other than a simple talk. I wish the adults entrusted with these cases would watch the situation more closely and take evasive action if they notice the problem occurs more than once or to multiple connected people. Voices about situations like bullying situations like this ring out across our whole entire country. But in all honesty, schools can't do much about it because it is hard to find proof or evidence of the bullying. In more cases than one, the kids who are being bullied and trying to defend themselves end up with more emotional, personal, and physical consequences than their antagonists. Please, if you or anyone you know see a kid or even an adult being harassed, don't ignore it. Step in or call authority to have the situation resolved. but do not walk away, knowing that in that situation, someone could get hurt or worse. It's with the experience that I've had, whenever I see someone being bullied or being picked on, I step in whether or not I'm actually involved. I step in even if it puts my own safety on the line. I refuse to stand by and watch someone suffer the same way I did. Because no one deserves to be lonely in a world so populated with humans just like us.
I'm curious, how often are you seeing even the very subtle sexual harassment or bullying type behavior at school? How often do you see that? And is it more than parents think?
Well, for me, when I see it, it tends to be, might not even be considered harassment, but it's hard for me to kind of explain in a way. When I see it, and it's like happening to someone, they aren't necessarily against it from what I've seen. Like they're...
Yeah, so regardless, how often are you seeing it? Is every day?
I actually kind of see it pretty often.
Yeah, like
Like
every week, every day? You see
every
it?
week.
Every week
Every
in the
week.
halls.
How about everyone on the panel?
I go to the same school as Piper, and it is a daily, well, I wouldn't say a daily occurrence, but I do see it happening a lot. It's startling at first, but because you were in the same high school with people for 4 years, sometimes you get used to it, which is awful to say, but it happens, so.
So it gets people let it go because you get so used to it, but you think every day you're seeing it.
Yeah, which, like I said, it's startling.
It's hard to say that it's something we've gotten used to, but it's just so often.
At LP, I don't notice it as much, which hopefully my other fellow students can attest to. What I do see a lot of is teasing, and usually people are okay with that because it's just among friends, but there's a very fine line between teasing and borderline bullying and verbal harassment.
I'll politely disagree. I think it depends on the perspective, and also the sort of people that you hang around. I see it daily here, and it can be very minute, very subtle, but it's still pretty obvious as to what's happening. And I think a lot of kids don't speak up because of that. I guess in return they don't want to be teased or they don't want to be bullied over saying something. So
what should we do?
I feel like the better thing to do, like for kids who are just going through this, just to be known for them that they can come to adults for help during something like this, because before this happened pretty often for me, even kind of in my freshman year. It happened to me before I really told anyone, just because I was scared of telling someone. Like the people who were doing it to me were pretty popular, so it was kind of that feeling of if I tell them, will the adults kind of side with them, what will happen to me, because so many people are on that person's side. So it's just kind of all that feeling of just wanting to be heard and like understood and like feel safe, if anything.
I think that it's important to train staff members to know when to step in and what to do, because I've seen on some occasions when a student is being teased or bullied and there's a staff member nearby, but they don't necessarily notice it, and if they do, they don't really know how to step in. They seem awkward and uncomfortable.
I think that, as you said, most kids think it's just joking. they get away with a lot by teasing and joking around, and they think that by doing that, that it's okay. By saying unkind things and saying, oh, I'm just kidding. So they don't view it as bullying, and it's not considered bullying if you say it as a joke. But I don't think what a lot of kids are aware of is that even joking, those things are really hurtful. And like the young man on the end said, there's a fine line between teasing and bullying. And sometimes adults may not even be aware that that teasing is really being cruel. And some kids may not even be aware that when they're being teased, what's being said is not okay. It's sort of a sticky wicket in that way, because some kids are more sensitive to being teased, and other kids may have a higher threshold for that. So it's a very difficult thing, a very difficult place to draw the line.
Yeah, you're right. And the phrase "just kidding" does not matter to whoever's being teased. And there's definitely a blind eye being turned to teasing about appearance, sexuality, and race. Yeah. And so we don't have enough staff members, SROs, teachers, counselors to stop this. So what it's really going to take is kids stepping up. So I think what you guys can do is continue to support programs like Sources of Strength and other programs that create leaders in the school that will step up when they see that.
Okay, as a parent with a high school student, and let's say, you know, my student comes to me or my child comes to me and talks to me about what's going on, at this point, as a student, or, you know, and you talk to a parent, as a parent, am I just to listen, or am I to bring this to the administration and say, hey, this is going on? Or do you feel like we are to give you a chance and you guys are to work it out, or do you want us to step in, or how, like, as a student and parent, would you do that?
So I was going to speak on what parents can do. You guys need to be able to talk and listen to us, but not only that, but help support us to go to the authorities and talk about it. And not only that, if we are afraid to, you should. Absolutely. I have a brother who, I talk a little bit more about it, was diagnosed with brain cancer. He has some cognitive challenges, and he's starting to get to the point where he is getting picked on, which is sad. But, you know, because he is so young, there's nothing he can really do about it. So a lot of the times, either me as a sibling or my parents have to do something about it, because he doesn't have that voice to say, this is bothering me. I mean, he does to my parents, but I don't think he can talk to the adults in his school about it. So.
Yeah, I think it's easy, like, I think it's just nice when the parents listen, but when they, like, bring it up to the school and stuff, that's also really good. But it's also up to the student, because sometimes you do need to stand up for yourself and, you know, say, if they call you name or something, don't let it, you know, hurt you and affect you, although that's not as easy as it sounds. I know it can be hard really getting bullied and stuff, and I think, like, talking to a teacher or just like a principal or something, trying to get it solved. Bullying is never okay, bullying should never be okay, and I really want this to stop, because people don't realize how hurt the kids get from any type of bullying. You know, it really does hurt children, and that's never okay. So I hope one day world peace happens and, like,
Bullying stopped.
Me too, Jonna.
Me too. I wish everyone had your enthusiasm.
I also think it depends on the severity of the problem too. Like personally, I don't want to go to the admin at all. Like it's just something I don't like to do unless my parents like, Riley, like, that's what you need to do. And if I don't do it, I guess that's when the parents' time to step in. So just knowing that my mom's there, my dad's there to listen to me is also something like I really, really value. Like every morning I wake up and have breakfast with my mom and I tell her like about my day and what I'm gonna do. And that's something that I always have valued, and knowing that she's there for me to listen to me and to my problems as well.
I think a hard part can sometimes be defining it, because in elementary school, bullying was defined to me as continuous verbal abuse or physical abuse from one specific person or set of people. However, it can be a lot more in-depth than that, or it can be multiple people doing it just once or twice that has a cumulative effect. However, you can't necessarily report that. So I think we need student leaders, as Lauren said, to step in when it happens, because if it's multiple small events, it's harder to pinpoint the problem.
I'm another student from Palmer Ridge. I know a couple of you. Just from your experience, how many times would you say that you hear slurs against people, like racial slurs, against people with a minority, like a gender identity or sexuality, just stuff like that? How often do you hear those slurs?
Ooh, Jonathan, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I hear that walking through that hallway. It's like it's almost as if every passing minute, in every passing period in that hallway, I hear something, some kind of slur, whether it's on gender identity, sexuality, racial. It all exists in that school. And it hurts to say it, but it exists, and it's the thing you always hear, and it's kind of like what Emma said, it's something that occurs so often it nearly becomes the normal, and it's terrible.
I also have a comment towards that. So I also go to PR, and I hear it a lot in the hallways, but I also hear it a lot in classes. And a lot of times people joke about like mental disabilities and be like, oh, I can't figure this out, I think I have autism or something along those lines. And being a person who works a lot with those students, it's very hurtful to hear all of those things. And people don't think about it when they're saying it, but they say it so often that it's almost normal that I've tried to tune it out, because it hurts me because I work so much with those kids, but people who don't work with those people don't quite understand how hurtful it is to all of the people who work with them and who are related to them. And so there's a lot of it, and even in classes, but then they'll say, I'm just joking. And I think the teachers try to ignore it because they don't want to do all the paperwork that will come along with it as well. Like sometimes the teacher will tell them not to say it, but then if they keep saying it, the teacher tries to ignore it and just keep going with the class, which I think is a big problem.
Have any of you stepped into those situations as a student, and how did that go?
I've had a couple instances, just even with my siblings, where I've stepped in, and that's a little bit of a different ground when you're kind of defending your siblings. But the perpetrators, like the kids that will say those things, it's an automatic, I was just kidding, and why are you getting so worked up, and why are you acting like it's a big deal? And so you're instantly invalidated, and your emotions are not you're just feeling like, oh, you did overreact. And I think that's a really big thing that they use to sort of manipulate you into thinking or into not saying anything. So.
I have two questions. First, what do you wish that the people who make those comments knew about you, or new about the way that you feel when you hear those comments. And if you've stepped into a situation, what works and what would you tell your fellow students about stepping up to come to someone else's support?
Can I put both of those questions on hold? Because it's perfect for our next story. Remember that.
Okay, so I don't want to sugarcoat anything I'm about to say. I haven't been granted the liberty of being spared my feelings, so everything I've decided to share today is honest and true. And it's not meant to offend, it's simply just the reality of what happens on a daily basis at Lewis Palmer. So just a little backstory. This is the beginning of my junior year, and I was sitting in the library with a bunch of my friends, and one of my friends, he started saying these racist jokes to me. Kind of out of the blue, I didn't provoke him or anything. And he was pretty relentless. I very clearly remember one of the jokes, and it was, why do black women wear heels so their knuckles don't drag on the ground? So at the time, I was a very passive-aggressive person. I remember giving him a sarcastic laugh and then trying to focus back in on my homework. I'd always been told not to react and not to fuel the fire. If I reacted negatively or caused a scene, I would be the one to get in trouble. After all, I was the one that died in his safety, right? What I didn't notice was the way I was beginning to sweat and fidget in my seat. I was no longer feeling safe. I was feeling cornered and embarrassed, and I was preparing for the guaranteed onslaught of jokes that were about to come next. He didn't disappoint. He was harsh and uncensored, and the entire time he was laughing like he thought he was genuinely being funny. The rest of the group got so uncomfortable that they moved tables, but no one said a word to me. No one thought to stick up for me while I squirmed in my seat and shook from humiliation and anger. They moved tables, and he continued. At one point, he asked, "What if I say the N-word? Are you going to hit me?" I responded as calmly as I could and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I'll hit you, don't say it. It's not funny. If you respect me, don't say it." The entire time I was laughing between words, laughing because I was so angry that I was about to cry, laughing because I was literally sitting alone and being verbally humiliated by this boy who called himself my friend, laughing because I didn't want to look like the angry black girl he accused me of being in one of his jokes, and laughing because he very obviously didn't respect me. Finally, he left, and he walked away the same as he came in, happy and unbothered. I, on the other hand, was left to sit in the polluted substance that he had dumped on me in his version of humor. If the librarian that was seated at the desk a few feet away had heard anything he said, she didn't react. There was no intervention, and I sat there until the period had ended and one of the group members hugged me. "Just ignore him," he said. "He's dumb." That made me even angrier. Of course he was dumb, and of course I should just ignore him. It was easy for them to say. They weren't the target of his jests, and they wouldn't go back home and lie in bed and replay the moment over and over, trying to think of what could have been done to make him stop. They wouldn't have to hear their mom tell them that it happens all the time, and I had to learn to control my reactions so I wouldn't be negatively labeled. Unfortunately, these sort of incidents are too common in my life, not only at school but in public. As unfair as it is to experience it in public, it's even more distressing to have it occur so often in school. Every student has the right to feel safe in their learning environment. However, I feel like that safety, sometimes specifically for black students, has been compromised. There's an extreme lack of diversity training for teachers, and I've come to the conclusion that it makes many adults uncomfortable to be expected to deal with racial situations. If they haven't had an experience or education in the matter, there's an overwhelming feeling of helplessness from both sides that can be resolved through communication and proper training. In any situation similar to the one I described, if the adult chose to step in, I feel like some burden would have been lifted from my back. The validation that I wasn't being harsh or overthinking what was said to me, that I was justified in feeling the way I was feeling, that I wasn't deserving of the degrading words I was weighed down with. With the lack of action from adults, I feel like my voice is not being heard. Despite every student being entitled to their freedom of speech, there's a line crossed when that speech is used to purposefully make someone feel like they're not deserving of respect. With no rebuttal from an adult, the targeted student begins to feel that way as well. To take a step forward, there has to be a desire from faculty to step past the initial upset of the situation and truly make an effort to understand the long-lasting impact.
So my questions were, if I can remember them now, I was caught up in your in what you were saying. And I'm sorry. I want to say I'm sorry for the things that you are going through and that each of you are dealing with. It's heart-wrenching. And so my questions are, have you ever stepped into a situation where someone is being bullied, or have you seen someone step in? What have you seen that's been effective? What hasn't been effective, and what would you want your peers to know? And the other thing, now that I remember, is what would you want that individual to know as he was making all those comments and saying all those things? What would you want those people to know?
I'll answer that second question. I would just really want them to know that long-lasting impact, and that I want to be kind of blunt here. Being a Black or mixed student, you hear these things all the time, and I think with and like media and things as well. And I think you're just expected to like blow it off or like joke back with them. So I would want him to know that that's not the case, and there really is a long-lasting, like, there's basically a scar that's left after things like that. And I've gone through so much since then. I really shouldn't remember what exactly this kid said to me, but I do because of how he acted. So.
Back to her question of what has been affected, what would you like your peers to know, and I guess how do we battle this together?
Kind of going back to what some student at PR said, I can't see, so I don't know who it is. I, again, have a brother that has some cognitive disabilities, and when people say things about kids with disabilities, or, you know, just kind of negatively portraying that person, it makes me angry, and I have stepped in a couple of times and been like, hey, that's not cool. Especially because I love psychology and I know the brain so much. I'm going to talk about it in my speech. But it really has an impact not only on the kids that you might be.
I know a lot of times in the hallways I see teachers and counselors and workers of the school, and there's such a scurry to be somewhere where they have to be, but like stopping and taking the time to say like, hi, how are you? Like, getting to know their students more almost. Like, some teachers are really well about that, but I know some of the admin at our school just like almost forget the children are there. So just like taking the time to appreciate it.
It's really awesome when you talk to an adult and they're just so understanding about your situation. Like, that's what I really like about all the admin here is they're just so understanding and they're so kind. And it inspires not only me, but I know a lot of other kids when the admin and parents and adults are just so understanding and loving towards the kids.
I feel like even if they aren't as empathetic with the child that they're talking to, like adults or counselors or like mentors that a lot of kids can look up to, could at least like take just a bit of time to just like truly listen and try to understand like what they're going through in a time of need, or if they just need someone to talk to, whether it's good, something good or bad, just to be there for someone.
I think intimidation is a big role, like when you're a student approaching a faculty member or even a deputy. So maybe just kind of like really like going the extra mile, maybe have like, I don't know, candy in your hand, something that makes a kid really approach you and really make them feel comfortable.
I was also going to add on this because this kind of brought up something it really opened my eyes about. Back a couple weeks ago, maybe even like a month or two ago, I forget how specifically long ago, I was taking part in a 3-hour on-site art competition at one of the other high schools outside of District 30, up in Colorado Springs. And it made me realize when I went there how predominantly white PR is. And that really actually, it's not to say that I didn't notice it before, but it just really widened my eyes at like how much different like the students at our school are from the ones we went to, and just how like things that they say or blow off as jokes like affect the minority that go to our school. Like it hurts even me, like when I see or hear someone saying that. It's like, that's not right. It's just not a good thing.
So to go back to one of the original questions you asked about intervening with an occurrence like this, I like to let my fellow students know a lot that sometimes you don't realize the respect you have with your peers until you use it. And of course that's easy for me to say, like 6'8" basketball player. The little sophomore is not going to come mess with me. But you have to assert yourself, and you have to establish that what they're doing matters to you, and it needs to stop. It's not like a, come on guys, stop. It's a, no, you need to put your foot down and say, this isn't okay to me. And I find that's what works.
I teach at PR, and I do feel that adults have a responsibility to set a tone in the classroom that kind of stuff is not going to be tolerated. Now, obviously, most kids are savvy enough not to say a lot of these kinds of things in front of an adult. And a lot of times we can't control the things that are going on in the hallway as much or whatever. But in my classroom, I know for myself, I don't tolerate teasing to the point of unkindness and insults towards any student, leave alone any kind of a SPED student or anything along those lines. And I do think that as adults, we have a responsibility to create a safe environment in the classroom where kids can feel just that, safe.
Also, when I think kids are bullied, they want a reaction to like boost their own confidence. So when stepping in, not necessarily making a big deal out of it, but just saying like, hey, was that necessary, to really make them think about what they did. And then they realize that, oh, like if this does affect them, like maybe I'll change my ways and not boost their confidence even more and egg them on to do it. So that is too.
I have a couple comments and a question. So I want to say as one of Miss Hill's students that in her class, I've only heard one racial slur, and it was when we had a sub. And when Miss Hill came back, she dealt with it immediately, and she doesn't put up with any of it. And I think she's the only teacher I've had so far that has had a classroom like that where you can feel safe and not worry about anything along those lines. Because even like the popular kids who usually can get away with anything don't get away with anything in her class. I also want to say to, I think your name is Lauren, the 6'8" person. For someone being small and that gets picked on and has gotten picked on since kindergarten, like forever, putting your foot down doesn't always work, especially when it's some of the popular kids, because they get away with a lot more easier. And being smaller than them and like standing up to them, they don't really react because they're looking down at you and they think they have a lot more power over you. So I feel like, yes, you have a point, but it doesn't work in every case.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned you really have to stress that it matters to you. And of course, if nothing's happening, that's when you need to go seek help. Yeah, of course, being tall does have an advantage. Maybe not on an airplane, but the truth is, if it matters to you, then you can stop it. And like I said, if nothing's working, then go seek help.
And then I also have a question for the whole panel. I was wondering how often you guys hear racial slurs or things like that in your classes. 'Cause I know in certain classes I hear it a lot more than others. And I was just wondering how often it happens in your classes too, or if it's just mine.
So the thing for me is in some of my, I don't hear it often in any of the classes I have, but on my bus I hear it all the time, and I understand that on the bus it's a completely different situation than in a classroom. The teachers can't really do anything because they're not there. They can't keep control of the situation, but I think for me, it's way more common on my bus than it is in a classroom.
Really quickly, I think I hear it a lot everywhere. I hear it a lot in classrooms. I hear it at the lunch table. I see it over social media. Actually, there was an instance where we had a whiteout for the football, which is just with the color, you just put white paint on your body to support the team, and someone had posted repping the KKK or something like that. Don't have the sheets, but we're repping the KKK. So it's just little things like that, and regardless if there's any comment about it or not, it's reoccurring and it's constant, and it's serious to that extent where they're referencing the KKK and things like that. So it's not just isolated incidents, it's constant.
I just wanted to say a little thing. I do have one kid in particular in one of my classes who not only says things like racial slurs, he also makes derogatory comments about women, which makes me really mad. Not just me being a woman, but also about the racial slurs. I am white, but even if somebody says something about a different race, I'm going to say something about it. I am not very confrontational, but when it comes to topics that I believe in so much, I can't be confrontational. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's not just racial slurs and all that kind of stuff. It's also derogatory comments about women. And I hear sometimes derogatory comments about men, but it's mostly about women. So.
Emma, would you go ahead and share your story?
Yes, I can do that. So I'm just going to put this out here. I have a fear of public speaking, so if I stutter, that is probably why, or I'm getting choked up. Transitioning from middle school to high school is hard for anyone. Dealing with the change in school, friends, and understanding expectations of teachers and parents as you are trying to become a young adult. This is enough to put any teen over the edge. I had a few more obstacles than the average teen. The summer before my freshman year of high school, on a family vacation, my brother became very ill. We found out that he had a mass on his brain that would require emergency surgery. It was confirmed that he had cancer, medulloblastoma, that would require radiation and chemotherapy. He lost his ability to walk, talk, swallow, and was partially paralyzed on his right side. Our family was divided. He was too sick to be transported home, and school was about to start. My brother and I had to stay with friends, and it was October before we were reunited again. Michael's recovery became my focal point, and my parents tell me that a large part of his successful recovery was the love and support that I had given him. About a year later, I started having my own set of challenges. It was on a trip to Australia with my dad when I started having pain. I was misdiagnosed with a knee injury and was prescribed physical therapy. The therapist was the one who recognized it was actually a hip problem. An MRI identified a torn labrum and bilateral hip dysplasia and would require 2 different extensive surgeries to correct. One hip at a time with a 12-month recovery for each side. I don't remember much from the pain and discomfort I was in from my first surgery, and it wasn't until the second one that I realized how much pain I was going to be dealing with. I found out after the fact that this surgery had been one of the most painful orthopedic surgeries you could have, even more so than spine. Being dependent on my family to eat, get dressed, and bathe was a violation of my privacy and humility. I felt alone because I was isolated from my classmates and friends, and it was extremely difficult because I've always been a very social and independent person. I mentally went through a lot with these surgeries. Something about it felt worse than when my brother got sick. I was never suicidal, but I was walking that very fine line. Friends can be a really important part of the healing process, but I had lost all of mine. Starting my senior year of high school this year, I had a really hard time deciding what I wanted to do. Almost every parent has asked me, "What are you doing after high school?" Or, "What college are you going to go to?" And my answer is, I have more surgery. I've always had a plan throughout high school and what I wanted to do afterwards. I can still do those things, but they're going to have to wait. I had a very hard time accepting that I wasn't in control of my life. My condition and pain was in control, and any step that I took, another problem would arise. A couple months ago, I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, a form of arthritis. My arthritis might be with me for the rest of my life, but I won't let it take my life, and I'm going to live every day like I would have before this diagnosis. In your brain, your amygdala is in charge of your emotions. Your frontal lobes are in control of how you react to those emotions. However, your frontal lobes don't develop until you're 25, which means that your teens think with their amygdala only. This means that their emotions are extreme, and that's why they react the way they do. When your teens come crying to you, acting like it's the end of the world, don't judge them. The best thing that you can do is act like it's the end of the world with them, and follow with advice that you would do in that situation. You should always just listen to them. I've had many times where I've broken down to my parents and to my boyfriend about how defeated I felt. And I can tell you by just them listening, I felt less alone. It grew my parents and I's relationship because they would try and understand how I was feeling. If you leave room for them to talk comfortably, especially about how they're feeling, it allows them to grow closer to you. I didn't really know how to answer the question, how did I cope with things when I was first starting this process? I've started to realize it was by positively thinking, all the support that I was given, and by not letting my trauma define me, I made it through. Don't let your child's trauma define them. My story is one with a happy ending where my parents have helped me, but there are so many stories that end badly where a parent could have made a difference. Be that difference for your child. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question. What do you think would be the best way to bring up to your parents that you want to talk with them without them judging you? Because I know that with my mom I can do that, but with my dad he tends to try to find a confrontational way to go about it. So what would you say the best way to do that would be?
I kind of have the same situation where sometimes my dad doesn't completely understand what's going on. For me, I think my parents have always left open the door to, if I have something that I need to talk about, I should feel okay to go talk to them about it. And I feel like with a lot of parents, a lot of my friends' parents, that's not always the case. It's kind of a hard question for me because I was fortunate enough to get the parents that I got, where they can understand me and understand what I'm going through. But I think if you were to go to your parent and they don't understand, hopefully I'm educating parents today, but if your parents don't understand, you should always try and find other ways, other adults that you can talk to. I'm really close with my photo teacher, also my rock climbing coach. I don't really rock climb anymore because I have arthritis. but I have gotten really close to her, and I feel comfortable to talk to her if I can't go to my parents necessarily, but I don't ever really feel the need to talk to her first. But I'd say if you find a teacher that you can get close to them. If it's easier than talking to your parents, I know sometimes that can be hard. So.
Lauren, we're ready for your wisdom.
All right, do you feel that tension in between your neck and your shoulder? Just go ahead and drop that. All right, so my name's Lauren, AKA 6'8" dude. I have one brother and one sister, and I have two incredible parents. And the focus of my story today is going to be on emotional support and mental health. So things I want you guys to think about as I talk are, what do you want out of your relationships? And then what is the currency between you and your child? And then what does your child think that currency is? And then before I start, my story reflects my own path of learning and growth. And I'm very thankful for my breakdowns and my breakthroughs in life because they've made me who I am. So November of freshman year here at OP, I had my third concussion, and it disabled me to the point where I could barely read a paragraph without taking a break. And I realized my worst fear was fear. And I was experiencing failure every day after that concussion. And it felt ugly. I haven't got test scores back and I got remarks from fellow students saying, Lauren, I thought you were smart. And this was the lowest point in my life. I didn't realize how easy it is to slip into depression while having a great support system. I had set pressures on myself because I realized the sacrifices my parents had made since day one to give me every opportunity I wanted. And what I've come to realize, students who have an ideal life with family support, monetary security, and plenty of opportunities have more to lose. And I was feeling this pressure big time my freshman year. I felt that I had to get good grades from my parents, or maybe they would not be happy, or maybe not love me as much. And my perceived currency with my parents was success and love. At this point in my life, empathy is what helped me out of my rut. My parents, doctors, teachers, counselors exemplified these following 4 keys of empathy and helped me see a positive light. These are some of the most powerful actions you can take to support someone in pain. Number 1 is perspective taking, or putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Number 2 is staying out of judgment and listening. Number 3 is recognizing emotion in another person that you've maybe felt before. And number 4 is communicating that you can recognize that emotion. I encourage you to approach your child with empathy rather than sympathy. To quote Dr. Brené Brown, empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Yet, I felt I had nothing to complain about my freshman year. I had support, but it is always important to know just because others' needs look greater does not always mean that they are in greater need of help. This goes for any of you out there. Do not minimize your need for attention if you're in pain. I'm now dealing with college admission disappointment, with loss of hope, and the weight of losing opportunities that I feel define who I will become. I've set standards in my life, and I'm now dealing with the disappointment of not achieving them. I mention this because personally what has helped is not always deflecting disappointment a child may have, but first seeking to understand, and then pursuing positive light. After all, who would think that the state championship recently Ranger of the Year student is struggling? So my closing messages are, depression is a hard thing to discuss, and it's often harder to understand. What works in terms of supporting a child, especially a teen, obviously varies, but I believe a consistent I love you message is most powerful. Many of us are extremely bright, but we still do stupid things like eat Tide Pods. So just please still love us. Next, engaging with curiosity rather than the something is wrong response will allow you to gain more insight and understanding of your child's thoughts. Don't always fight the pain right off the bat. I never truly considered suicide in the darkest of my times. I don't know that feeling, but I am familiar with losing friends. I'll end with this. Statistically speaking, one of you may end up taking your life. I want you to know this. Getting help is not about pity or excuses. It's about a respect to yourself. If you need help, do not hesitate. And I want to end with, I know we've said a lot of negatives today, but there's a lot of positive in both of our schools, and it's because of people like you. So thank you guys.
I got a question. So do you see negative stigmatism between mental health or depression in youth within your guys' schools?
Can you elaborate? Like, wait.
Okay, so I'll elaborate. In law enforcement, you don't go get help. So if I'm depressed, there's a negative stigmatism for repercussions on me getting help. And do you guys see that in the school system? Are you guys worried of the negative stigmatism or association of being depressed and wanting to go get help?
I see that. Not specifically me, but a lot of the times when I see people sad or sometimes try and reach for help, others pass it off as, oh, they just want attention, that kind of thing. So I'd say there is.
Not only that, but Safe to Tell, which is used or is supposed to be used in a good light, as kids who need help can go to Safe to Tell anonymously and, say how they're feeling or, whatever they need to use Safe to Tell for. In our schools, at least in PR, I don't know about LP, Safe to Tell is a joke, which is sad. I have heard many people say, oh, are you going to call Safe to Tell on me? Or, why don't you just go call Safe to Tell? Which is awful. And no kid should ever, especially if they need help, need to hear that. Because that is an outlet. But I wanted to add that in, as a lot of the ways you can go to talk are joked about in our school, which is not great.
I have a comment about that too. So I've had Safe to Tell called on me, and I still don't know why, because the person who came to talk to me did not really explain why. Like, the person who called Safe to Tell on me gave very few details of why they were doing it, so it was almost as if it was a joke. I also have an uncle who is a cop who said he's had Safe to Tell called multiple times in a week on someone because they were calling Safe to Tell as a joke on this person, so they kept getting Safe to Tell called on them. So Safe to Tell is supposed to be a good outlet, but it's being used as a joke a lot more than it's being used for good.
I think there are a lot of jokes made about Safe to Tell. However, it is a very effective way to get help. And I think the counselors will agree, there's been a lot of Safe to Tell calls. And you guys have been filing how many reports? Like staying after school? Thank you guys. But not wanting to get help is a huge issue. A lot of people just think they're a little bit sad. They don't realize they're depressed. So I think what other students need to know is if you see somebody that's depressed, you need to get them help. And if you see somebody that's suicidal, you need to seek emergency services. That's my advice.
I'd like to add in, I've noticed that a lot of people, whether that's parents or students, shrug it off when someone is down. And like someone will be really sad and like crying in the bathroom, and a kid will see it but just be like, going on with my day. You never really know what's actually going on in someone's life, and I really wish that awareness for everyone to like try to reach out, because it's so important and it can make someone's day so much better when you do that.
I think that's a really good thing to comment on, because it's just not many people take depression, especially at our school and possibly LP. I'm not a student here, so I can't say for sure. They don't take depression or anxiety or a lot of that seriously. They'll just take it as a joke and throw it over their shoulder, making side comments. back when I was even still in middle school, I was also I had some depression during that time, and it was like hard for me. Like a lot of stuff I drew was kind of dark and everything because of that depression. And even in classes, like I stayed away from people. But I think it's more of like the stuff that you hear, like mentioned throughout all our stories that's mentioned or said or slurred, and then it's just kind of thrown off to the side as a joke, and it's like, it's not a joke when you realize how deep of a wound it can put on someone. Like, I've legit had someone come up to me when I was depressed sophomore year, and they're like, well, if you're so depressed, then why don't you just go take a razor and end it right now? Doesn't seem that hard. I had that said to me, and it was hard for me because one of the very few people I trusted telling that kind of stuff wasn't there for me. But that kind of stuff, whether it's racial, sexual, gender, or even mental, it hurts. And a lot of kids nowadays don't think about that because they think just using oh, it's a joke as a protection shield works, and a lot of times it does.
I think it's important. Lauren said it, and it was in one of my What I Wish You Knews, but I'm just going to phrase it because I think it applies to what we were talking about. Feelings, whether it's student to student or adult to student or to adults, I think it's really important that things are viewed without a lens and unbiased, so that way more understanding can be reached, and that way depression, suicidal thoughts aren't just brushed off and ignored.
Hey guys, can I say something real quick? It's Carrie Ellis, Spanish teacher at Lewis Palmer. I just want to say, like, hi guys. There are people in the building that really care about you guys, truly. And I know hearing you guys talk tonight, I just want to say thank you very much. I mean, it's clear that you guys, your high school experience is not what mine was. You guys have a whole lot more pressure. But one of the things that sources of strength was we've done in the past, and I'm trying to get other teachers on board, is to share 5 minutes of their class, like on 2nd and 6th hour every day. And what we do, what I've done in my classes is we've done the 4-minute body scan, just teaching kids how to relax, how to decompress in 4 minutes and hit the lights out in the classroom. Or we've done gratitude journaling, change that positive focus, start looking for something good in your life. We've written letters of gratitude to a trusted adult. I mean, and all these are things that we've pulled from, aligning our chakras, baby girl, I love you. But like, we've pulled these from sources and other, because I think it is really real. And I think what you guys are going through is, I just can't imagine being in your shoes, you guys. So you guys are like brave warriors every day. But I think, maybe as a community, of teachers and staff, maybe what we can do is maybe figure out more ways to service you guys like that. Because I think really taking 5 minutes outside of academics can really help you guys go a long way. Am I right? Am I on the right path? Because I'm ready to crusade for this. So, okay.
Yeah. And I've definitely noticed we've said a lot of negative stuff today, like, again, Lauren said. But I think, I noticed that there are some teachers who do all that stuff, and I do notice it, and my peers notice it, and it does help. So, keep it up.